Welcome to another Salty Chillers Entertainment Podcast. This is Hero Darkness.
Dot Logic.
Vision numbers.
Valentine.
And Valentine is one of our newest members in the podcast that we're doing, and she will also be joining us throughout as we do our other videos, as we discuss and do ideas. So welcome, Valentine, to the team.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Glad to be here.
Huzzah.
Glad you can be here, though.
So today's topic, it's always a pleasure to have you around. So today's topic is one that we approach with caution and doing our best not to go super crazy or come across as we're advocating for one thing or advocating for the other thing, because for today's purposes we are talking about something that has ignite in recently here in the US about a week or so ago now, that happened in Florida. And what we'll be talking about is there a reason of why this thing's happen and what is causing it? Is there a relation that happens with just how we are in our environments? Is there a relation that happens with the type of environment that we put ourselves in with the video games and our media? Or is it something else altogether? And is there a relation of why guns? And the reason why we're approaching this with caution and that is because we don't want to come across that we're pro or anti Second Amendment. We want to come across as a voice of concern and hopefully give solutions to some of the problems or things that we can be more aware of to help. And so we're just using that event as a reason to be discussing this. And we all agreed that we will be discussing the issue and not discussing what should be happening in the political arena. And if that's what you feel that you need to do in your own personal life, the power to you. We just want to bring out the voice of reason, hopefully through all this. And so first off, let's start with video games, and because that seems to be a very easy go-to topic with a lot of things that
The
happens
most
with
accused, so to speak.
yes, one of the most accused. So
Interesting to go in and blame. Because it's
That
this.
and or movies, because
Well,
why
not
not
movies.
blame? Why not blame things like that?
so we'll go ahead and start there.
I think it's interesting that I was looking at this article, Gun and Games, the relationship between violent video games and gun crimes in America. And they mentioned that blaming films and television might make more sense if we didn't export our entertainment to countries that, again, don't have the mass shootings that are alarmingly frequent in Western society. So I think that that's something that's kind of interesting, like video games and movies. If you look at like Japan, that's where a lot of games are made, and they don't have the same kind of violence that we do. So why does it make sense to blame the video games when video games are a worldwide thing? And movies.
Well, and not to mention, if we're going to be focusing a little bit more on the gaming, do they play more games, more hours in their games than what their Western counterparts do?
Actually the frequency of video gaming is the same. In fact, over there it's more about relational video games. Like everybody over there has a Nintendo DS, so playing in groups and playing in general all the time, they just whip out their DS and they start playing. So I think it's very similar.
But it's more around playing with friends instead of just solo playing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm understanding.
So why is that a difference, do you think?
Well, with me, throughout growing up, I was more of a solo gamer, but ever since I got back into gaming for, say, after a nice couple years break, I went to more playing with friends because I realized I like talking to my friends as I play, so we both share with the same experience. So look at that aspect. If you're with friends, you can share, you can talk, you can be with your stress and vent in that exact same way as you're playing. But I also know with the Japanese culture, they have a lot dealing with respect and respecting people, and that could be one reason why there's probably not as much problem, since there is a large things towards respect over there.
Well, I was just using Japan as an example. I'm just wondering why, like, in Europe, gaming is a big thing as well. Like, it's everywhere. But Europe is also a place where, video gaming, even solo gaming, is something that's readily done. So, like, what makes us different, and why blame games for that?
One thing that I kind of want to point out there is not necessarily the games themselves, but if you kind of look at the psychological issues, there are a lot of things that can go into, why people will have, issues and things like that. Some of them could be more of a mental issue, being bullied. And of course, gaming can, raise a person's aggravation, make them, more aggressive, things like that. But there are, in my opinion, a lot of factors that go into why people go and, commit these crimes. And then, people will sit and blame video games. Yes, video games are, probably a factor in terms of the aggravation and the aggression that can build in people because of, for instance, some people find pleasure in things like this, so to speak. And that can be, just one factor, but that's not, the full picture on what to blame. Like I was saying with one of my things, a mental issue is another thing. Morals are another thing that I want to point out that will make people do things versus us. Because if you look at all of us, yes, I'm pretty sure we've all played GTA or something like that that was a violent game, but none of us, would ever think about going out and doing that. I want to say it's more of a person's state of mind, overall well-being, than more of just the game that they play, which will lead them to go out and do that. And then people will end up blaming games for it. It's like, yes, they may play it, but that doesn't mean that that is the sole reason.
Do you also think the reason why the games are so easily point out is because the lack of understanding of the games themselves, or just a lack of understanding of the gaming culture?
I want to say it's probably the lack of understanding of the game culture. Because if you look at kind of most people and they see games like, take for instance Manhunt, I think that game is actually probably one of the most violent game out there. And I think it was also banned in some places, some countries and things like that, because of its high intensity of violent games. There's a video I actually looked at with some of the most violent games. I think that one was number one, and he mentioned how it was probably one of the most violent games out there and couldn't be sold in certain areas because of it. It's just the sheer content of said game where it's frowned upon, a lot of people will just assume that, oh, this game is violent, so it's going to make the kids violent, things like that. No, not necessarily. They look at one specific genre and assume it for the entire thing. It's like judging a book, it's like judging a book by its cover, or just a genre as a whole, and then assume everything.
Yeah, and I also feel, along with that, maybe a lack of understanding of what's in the game or why the game is, because one thing I've found in my research, surprisingly, it wasn't till the first Mortal Kombat game came out that there wasn't a rating system.
And they had to make a rating system to kind of, for people to have an understanding. Oh, okay, this game is rated for mature. It's gonna be violent, nudity,
The
sexual, just kind of things
ESRB.
like that. Anything of that's yeah.
Yeah, and so because of Mortal Kombat, that has become a thing. And Mortal Kombat is one of the most top targeted game franchises of why. And then another top targeted one, as already mentioned, is Grand Theft Auto, because all that people see is you run around, you steal people cars, you kill people.
And just for that one reason, like I like playing games, but I don't like playing games where I am playing a game that's against the law. With me, my conscious, who I am, like I don't want to play a game where I am doing that.
You just don't see the appeal of it.
No, I don't. Yes, I still play games where I can be said bad guy by making bad choices, but I play that more because it's my choices affect stuff. So I'm more curious if I play the bad guy role in said game, am I gonna get a different outcome? Where does my choices affect the story? Is it the one at the beginning? Is it the middle? Or is it all of them in between?
I
That's
think
what
it's
I get
also.
curious about
Oh,
those.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like touching on the ratings and stuff, and how Mortal Kombat and the Entertainment Software Ratings Board. Since we established the ratings board, we were able to do more research on violently rated video games and youth violence culture in America. And Ferguson and Olson's findings in, let's see, 2011 or 12, that actually youth violence has gone down, even though that aggressive and violent video game sales have gone up. I have a chart, but it's a podcast, so
No one can see
um,
a chart.
right, exactly. But from
We'll make sure we
1996 to
leave the link
2011,
to all this below.
right? Yes, and the charts, says that it's actually youth violence has gone down statistically, even though we hear about all these about all the gun violence.
So now that raises the next question. If video games can raise aggression, but yet the violence of youth going out doing stuff has decreased in recent years, or within the past decade, does that mean there's something else happening in society that is causing these things to happen?
And that's kind of where, I revert back myself to kind of what I said was it just, has to do with multiple different factors. Again, if the person's been abused or bullied, or they have a mental illness, or they're socially isolated. And of course, video games can be a thing. That's kind of where I revert back to that. Because, most people that, have some form of mental issue or disease or something like that will typically try to do something for attention, sort of say. When I was in high school, there was an incident where a person had brought weapons to school, and it just happened to be on the day of an assembly. Um, and the thing is, I actually known that person, but I didn't know that this was going on, and I didn't know actually who had did it until a few weeks after, surprisingly. But essentially, he was just trying to get crying for attention, so to speak. Um, he did had believe he had to go to court. I don't remember, but he did had to go and he had to get help. Um, there's a lot of people that he wasn't needless to say he wasn't going back to school uh, through that time just because of that issue. But a lot of people, when they found out who it was, they stayed away from him. Now, me myself, I didn't. Because again, for a while, I didn't realize, who did it. But when, I found out, also, okay, I wasn't scared, I wasn't concerned. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering, holy hell, how have, I kind of not realizing this, being someone's friend, I didn't realize that this person was crying out for help. And kind of, well, he wasn't one of the, he didn't have a lot of friends, so to speak. So I guess, that was an issue, and he decided, again, like I was saying, again, it was a cry for help. I don't remember because this was years ago, 4, maybe 5 years ago. I really don't remember. Um, Unfortunately, I wish I kind of talked to him about it today because, we were working together. But like I was saying, like socially isolated, not having a lot of friends, things like that, and probably being picked on. Again, that can lead to a mindset of not the best. Really can't find the right words for half of what I want to say, but
Well, you bring up some good
it's
points.
one thing will lead to another.
You bring up some good points. In some studies that have been conducted, it's the kids are not always the loners. The kids aren't always going through a mental illness, as the media likes to call it. Sometimes they just are uncertain about themselves. They feel like, to them and how they perceive reality, it's them against the world, and the world has done them wrong, and they want to get back. And in some cases of that, sometimes the isolation and spending hours by themselves alone is not helping. It is not helping out the situation. It is hurting them as a person. And it's so easy in today's society to get online and create your other personality, but relating it back to the games, yes, studies can show that there is an increase in aggression while playing the games, and that at the same time, can that be a healthy out for the person if they're allowed to express that aggression in a healthy environment, in a controlled environment? Because my initial thoughts is, yeah, it should be able to, because they are allowed to let it out. Because I know from personal experience, if I'm allowed to let out and express myself emotionally, then I am okay. I am being healthy and on an emotional level.
Yeah.
And now, do we as guys, do we put ourselves in unnecessary pressure on having to be the manly man? Having to show that we're the man by not expressing our emotion? Are we causing self-harm on ourselves and in society by doing this?
No, but society as a whole probably frown upon you. Well, not everybody, but a portion of it.
And do you think that's a problem that we face in today's society? Is that a man's not allowed to express himself?
Well, considering how it was, most people tend to not stick at, or I'm probably gonna get sidetracked. I'm probably gonna get off topic on that one. People typically tend to go by the rules of society, and that's not always the good thing because society can control things. how a person is and things like that. And in my opinion, I think that that can also lead to why a person would go out and do some of the things they do.
I think that the whole ideology of, boys being tough and not emotional, I think that actually, if you look back in the 50s and like earlier in America, that was more of a problem. Like boys had to be tough and rugged and build a house with their bare hands and stuff like that, and girls were feathery and skirts and doing the hair up all nice and not leaving the house without your makeup on. Like those social constructs were more rigid back then than they are now. Now it's almost like, I'm not gonna say it's like almost okay, but it's okay more to be yourself in a society now than it was back then, especially if you didn't fit the social construct. I was done.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
just
Okay.
processing, and there are things that I do feel like that society puts unnecessary pressure, and us guys, let's be honest here. We put unnecessary pressure on each other to be the man, because surprisingly, with women, I'm pretty sure Valentine can vouch for us here, is there's no thing that a woman has to do to become a woman. Like there's not this unspoken woman code out there where I must do this to become a woman. Only us men have that issue. Only us men go, this is what makes a man a man. You have to be able to do X, Y, Z. And whatever that is in the conversation, whether it's having a girlfriend or being able to play a sport or being able to, whatever it is, there's that XYZ that we have to have that makes us a man. And if we're not living up to that, then we're not a man. We're less than that.
Well, I would say that girls have the same thing, and I can't speak on the XYZ for boys because I'm not one. I'm a girl. But I have a lot to say on the XYZs of what it takes to be like, more feminine. Like, it instead of a girlfriend, having a girlfriend, having a boyfriend. And, a lot of girls would get essentially teased for not wearing makeup or, being too boyish in their, and what have you, So I think that the social pressure is the same on both sides. It's just different. For us, it's more catty and emotional. For guys, it's more like, different than that.
Yeah.
I will say that, and feel free to agree or disagree with me here, guys. We let our pride get in the way, and we have to let our pride determine how manly we are. Now, tying this back in, that may be what's going on and what's going through the minds of these people, is that they feel that their manliness is being threatened and being called out on, and so they have to show it in some manly way. And
Because
sometimes it's not the most healthiest way at.
now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the gun violence is more male centered, right?
Yes,
Yes.
more males
Okay.
seems to have done the shooting than females. I haven't gone looking to actually see how many females actually go and do that.
Well, historically, females don't choose guns. We choose knives. Like, stabbing is a lot more common for a female than shooting. Not saying that we don't. There are women that pick up guns and shoot every day, but it's more uh, it's more on the knife attacks for the girls.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure, and we'll make sure we verify all this, that there is been and there has been shootings with the guns where it has been a female. Yet the only thing that we commonly hear is the guy, because there's something
Right.
that goes on in the guys when you pick up a gun.
We're fucked up. Sorry.
Effed up.
There's just something about it. I will admit, I have picked up a gun. I have picked up a shotgun and used the shotgun. Now, to clarify, it was with a supervised adult who knew how to operate the gun and taught me gun safety in that before I went out and shot the shotgun. And the only thing I went out and shot was a clay pigeon. And I also
Good
have
old
picked
clay pigeons.
good old clay pigeons. Clay pigeons are awesome to shoot, and there's just something that clicks inside a guy. It's like, I have the power. This is awesome. And for that short time, me who doesn't feel awesome all the time in some respects of life, or like I'm untouchable, those were one of those rare moments where I have a gun. I have power. If I point this at someone, they're going to jump. And I also carry myself a little airsoft gun. Not exactly the same feeling, but it's still the same things. Like, I hold something powerful in my hand. I got something that I can point and shoot. And
Not as
okay.
intimidating.
Yeah, it's that intimidation factor. And so that I would suggest that may be a reason why that's the weapon of choice, is because of that intimidation factor. Now, going back, Rich told us before we started that he's been doing research and has some concerns about virtual reality and that moving forward.
Well, it's not like I have done some research, we'll say, but I done some looking into virtual reality a little bit. No, I've been thinking about what that can do to simulate the mind, because I, going back a couple months, there was this person who came and spoke and was doing a spiritual fireside. And he then went and talked about how he had his VR set on his daughter. Had it set up, well, the daughter went up into this elevator and overlooked this plank. There was nothing around it but the plank. And his daughter sat and cried for 30 minutes. She couldn't sit on the plank. She knew she was at home and everything, but she couldn't sit onto that plank. And then she finally did it, after crying for 30 minutes. And that also made me think, if at some point virtual reality, because it could simulate the mind in different ways, it can come to a point where people could get mad and frustrated and think that exact same simulation of virtual reality. And I don't know if that exact same thing could then translate into the real world. Because it can still simulate, and that it triggers your senses. You feel as if you're there. You have your earphones. Everything you see, you look around, you're there. Not somewhere else, but you're there. Everything you're seeing, hearing, not so much feeling. Well, hearing if you're in the headsets.
Yeah. I mean, because if you think about it, virtual reality, well, you're just looking with some videos and things like that. There are some games that have been turned into virtual reality. Take Resident Evil 7, for instance, Biohazard. I've never seen the game through virtual reality, so I don't know if it's still the same as what it is, without it. But some of the games now are getting to the point where they're becoming so realistic looking that it can be hard to somewhat differentiate difference between real and virtual reality for some people. And some people will take things, a bit too serious, which is why virtual reality, the games and stuff like that, can lead to an issue.
Something last time in research, they'd put the old VR headsets when it was still being developed on kids and have them experience something. And all the kids thought what they went through was real. When it was all fake. All the kids thought that them playing with the wells and that was real because of how it was done.
Yeah.
Which the video I was watching, it's like, that is scary. To think that something like that can happen. Well, the kids could think while playing a virtual reality game, yes, these are more little kids, that it could implant false memories into them by accident.
Yeah,
and that's something else that I've been thinking about is how can that affect when we get better virtual reality technology, how that's going to affect the mind, and could that stimulate something in the brain and cause more harm, or are they going to, if they get frustrated, go into a virtual reality game and do it there and not in real life? I don't know.
That all depends on the mindset of the person.
Yes.
Touching on the same thing that Rich is talking about, Orson Scott Card wrote a novel called Ender's Game, and touching on not so much the aggression and people going out and doing it in virtual reality, but what was going on is the main character Ender, the entire time he gets to command school, he thinks he's playing a game. Now I'm going to spoil the ending for both the film and for the book, but when he gets to the big test day, he destroys the planet. First time you ever see the planet and everything, he destroys it. And after he does that, he looks behind him where everyone in the military is watching him, and they're all clapping excited, and then they tell him, oh, by the way, you weren't facing Mizum Rackham. You were actually fighting our enemy. And Ender just lost it. He's like, you knew and you allowed me to commit a genocide? That is unacceptable. He felt terrible for his action, because in his mind, he was just playing a game.
Yeah.
And likewise, there was another movie, I'm not as familiar about it, but it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's called Shooter, where the kids control a prisoner and they go through and they play a deathmatch scenario where the kids are controlling these adults in this scenario and controlling what they do and how they, if the person lives or die. And yes, it's just a game, but at what point do your games become your reality? Because what's interesting in my study and research, it's inconclusive on every shooter with the gun violence, with all the mass shootings that we cover on the news. Not all of them are suffering from mental illness. Of what they did with their research, they started around the 1960s, 1970s, and went to about the mid-2000s. And what they were able to conclude, only about 40% had some sort of mental illness going on. And as
Yeah.
Salt pointed out, there are multiple factors that can and will lead to different things, whether it's being the bully. Sometimes they're not the bully. Sometimes they're the most popular kids, or they're the ones trying to be the most outgoing and most sociable, but they keep getting rejected, and now they feel like it's them against the world, and they want to get even with the world, and so they will go out and target strangers and get even with the world, and then either get someone or they themselves will end their lives in some cases. Not every shooter will do that. And what the studies have also shown is the potential shooter in some form or fashion, whether it's telling a friend or leaving comments somewhere on the internet or a YouTube video, they let someone know about their intentions.
One way or another.
One way or the other. Now, in the case of Florida, my understanding is they were aware and they knew. And nothing happened.
Yeah, it even escalated up to a higher point too, where people knew, but they did nothing.
And so we want to encourage people to, if you notice your friend acting off, don't hesitate on reporting. And keep that reporting going until something is done. Because there's no need to live life in fear. There's no need to wonder what if. And if you are a friend or consider yourself a friend, connect and talk to them and get to know what's going on. And offer that helping hand.
There's honestly nobody wants to live in fear. That's probably like the worst way to live, to be honest.
Fear is a very powerful motivator. So is anger and hatred. I mean, you don't even have to have video games or movies to look at that. Think of the Menendez brothers. They used guns. They killed their parents. And they did not play video games, you know? And that's one of the most publicized crimes in history. But it was the fear that they lived under their own roof from their mom and their dad that and that's I mean, there's debatable, people debate this all the time, but even so, the the atmosphere and the tension in the house all came to a head, and they used guns and they killed their parents. And it's just, it doesn't matter if it's outside or in. If you're living on fear, you tend to think even the craziest ideas are somehow the solution to the problems. And it doesn't have to be a mental disorder. It could just be the environment. Like Salt's friend. I don't know what motivated him to bring a weapon to school, but he had to have had some fear or just like
Now,
frustration.
fair warning, he even claimed he had no motivations to actually use it. That's
He
what
just
he
wanted to
said, but a
bring
lot of
it.
people don't. Uh, but what some people were saying, it was more of just a cry of attention. Um,
What did he
because
say
I
though?
get that I don't remember, but the only reason why that even got reported to begin with was because he was showing some people, and then those people said something to a teacher, and the
Ah,
teachers did something. I mean, it was on a day during like an assembly, so I mean, pretty much everybody was going to be in the gym. So that also kind of raised some questions on its own there.
Fear is a motivator, though.
Yeah, but like I said, if I could have, gotten some or talked to them today, I probably could have gotten some more information and things like that, and they talked about it better. But again, I completely forgot, and it just slipped my mind about that. But wish I would have had some more information about that subject as a whole. If it was more of a mental thing or just kind of what was going on, I think that probably would have helped that a little bit better than what it was. Now, from what I heard, it wasn't any guns or anything either. It was more of kind of like knives and things like that.
It's still a weapon, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not just a pure gun issue either about these things.
It's a weapons issue, and we're not saying, oh, you take one away, they'll go to something else.
People will always find ways to do the job that they're trying to do, regardless if it's fully automatic weapon or something they have to stab somebody with. People will find a way to get the job done.
But I think it's important to note on the school end, if there were more resources available, then maybe some of these things might not have happened. If there were more counselors, if there was more funding for schools, the teachers, just having more resources to deal with some of the fear, pain, trauma, anger that, they encounter every day with students.
Yeah.
And this isn't just in school setting, but just in general, the resources need to be more readily available. And no, psychiatrists are not going to be able to predict and know, oh, this person's going to tend out to do this or this, because they can be wrong. But knowing that there's help and knowing that someone's trying and they want to change and they are tired of living their life in fear and they want to live their life in hope and happiness and gladness, in positive things, then life will become better for them. Because this is a real thing. It's saddening that it's happening what almost feels like yearly now. But we can be mindful, and as you're going about your day-to-day life, and be mindful of the type of environment you're putting yourself in. Be smart and get yourself out of environments that make you angry, that make you feel like you have to be violent.
Yeah.
And
And
if you're finding yourself that you're playing too many violent things, reevaluate and ask yourself, is there something better? And take the time to get yourself out of that negative environment, because it may or may not. Data may be inconclusive with that there, but just be mindful, especially if you know you struggle with your anger or you struggle with certain things in life. Be mindful of that and take the time to remove yourself from those environments. Or in Rich's case, play online with friends.
Oh yeah, because that's always a lot enjoyable and pretty stress-free.
I mean, if you want to continue playing with those games, fine. Then I'm pretty sure all of us in here will be in agreement. Get online with friends. Play with friends. It makes the enjoyment that much more. And maybe it'll help you out with whatever you're struggling. Don't close yourself off. Don't let fear rule the day.
And one thing I have to say with that is fear can be a mind killer. It will lead you to do things that you yourself wouldn't normally do. And that alone can just be terrifying, and that can be a whole another topic for another day.
But in light of what's happened, we are mindful and we do want, and this is us, not so much what everyone says, oh, thoughts and prayers. This is us saying, hey, enough's enough. We need to step up and speak up about the warning signs, because the warning signs are sometimes they back away, they seem disconnected, they seem have the loss of interest in things, they tend to start taking an interest in things they normally didn't have interest in, or if they do have an interest in certain things, they tend to amplify and increase. And then do what you can to help those around you. Because believe it or not, Rich has always been about and will always be about wanting to help someone. I don't care who you are. Rich always has a smile on his face, and he will do what he can to help you out.
And that's not a lie. I love helping those out that I can.
And he will sit down and take time out of his day. I'm the same way. I'm pretty sure Valentine and Saul are the same way. Take time to listen. And we have, this past week, created a Twitter page. Same thing, SaltyChillersentertainment. The @ChillerSalty. And so if you want to reach out and talk to us on Twitter, let us know. Talk to us. We'll talk back. We'll listen. We'll carry on conversations.
Shoot us a message anytime. Anytime.
We're always available unless we're sleeping.
But one of us
Then
will get in
availability goes out
contact.
the window.
But we will get in contact as soon as possible. And so hopefully this leads to better discussions and everything else. And as always, we'll leave all our sources in the description. And that, thank you for taking time and listening to this. And if you want us to cover more in depth about other aspects of these topics, let us know. Because we just did a brief discussion, and this can easily be more than that. And so if you guys want to hear more of our thoughts about things along these lines without going into the political arena, let us know, and we'll see what we can do to make a program. So this is Hero Darkness.
It's all logic.
Which numbers?
Valentine.
And as always, stay salty.
Okay,